Hi, my name is Dan Paulson, and I'm in a video series where I am doing my interpretation of Jesus' teachings in this video, and some comparisons between Jesus, Lao Tzu, and the Buddha. And I'm not going to do a lot of setup on this one. I continue to do that over and over again. It's incredibly important to have that in place, but I've done it in previous videos. I'm going to post a link to the introduction to this series. And if you don't want to go through all of that, at least go to the video previous to this one where I did set it up in the beginning of that video as I started working on Jesus. The first thing I want to do is jump back to a couple of verses that were just covered in the last video. I covered them there, and they're actually part of a little bit larger section, and I didn't cover the whole section due to another layer of complexity. I left that out. So I introduced this simpler one to begin with. It was the one about the cloak and putting the patch on it, the new patch, and us being the wineskins and putting the new wine inside. There's a preceding part to that I want to cover, and we're going to take a little deeper look at some interpretation techniques. I will remind everyone I'm using the New Standard Version, the New Revised Standard Version, and this is Matthew 14 through 17. Then the disciples of John came to him saying, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said to them, "The wedding guests cannot mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them, can they? The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old cloak, for the patch pulls away from the cloak, and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins, otherwise the skins will burst, and the wine is spilled, and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved." Okay, there's a number of things nested in here, and at various times I'll be zeroing in for details, and other times pulling back for a larger overview. And first of all, I want to combine these two. If you look at them, the first thing I notice is when the disciples of John came to him saying, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said to them, "The wedding guests cannot..." And you, wait a minute. The wedding guests, what are you talking about? He was asking about fasting. So right there, pay attention to that. Set that off to the side right now. We'll get back to it. Okay, back to the first verse, then let's detail it a bit. When the disciples of John came to him, who are the disciples of John? That's one of the elements we need. We and the Pharisees. So it's both the disciples of John and the Pharisees together. They fast often. What does that mean? So this isn't standalone, and I hope that you understand enough of the Bible to see all the different correlations. I'm not going to go make all of them. I'll just bring in kind of things that we should all know. John was the old way. John was baptizing people in water. He was baptizing them in flesh before Jesus came, who was then going to be baptizing them in spirit. So what we have is this transition here from the physical world to the spiritual world that's happening in this teaching right here. We've got John saying that. Why do we have Pharisees involved there? A Christian idea that I'm familiar with, and I'm not sure about all Christians, but I get this idea that Pharisees are just these bad, nasty, horrible people, and that's not what Jesus is referring to. And the Pharisees were not that. The Pharisees need to be that if you need to separate your teaching from the Jews, if you need to be a Christian. But if you don't need that, then let's take another look at Pharisee, and let's define what a Pharisee is much better. In their day, the Pharisee was somebody who could read, write, understood Scripture. They're in a land and a time where people do not read, do not write. The material is not available. It's written down by hand by scribes, messed up. Somebody's got to read it to them. The wedding guests cannot such and such. And people are like, what does that mean? It's up to the person who reads it to them to say, here is what that means. What do we see happening today? That's what ministers do. That is what anybody that teaches Scripture does. They say, here is what it means. I'm teaching you. The difference is people today can read and they have their own copies. Back then, nobody did. You relied completely on the Pharisee to not only read you the Scripture, but to tell you what it meant because it was weird. But there's three layers here. And my contention is the Pharisees did not know layer 3. They were teaching a different level. They were teaching different things. They were good people. They were doing their best. They were trying to lead their people and teach them. But they weren't the kind of people to know the inner teaching because it's a hard teaching. So the Pharisees are spreading around Judaism and teaching people what to do. Okay, we're there. John, the Pharisees, they both represent an older way of life in the physical world where we don't quite know physical. We're fasting. We are not eating. We're spending the day not eating food in order to, well, for our pious various reasons. And this says, why do we fast? At some point, we'll leave that right there. Let's move on to the next one. And Jesus said to them, the wedding guests cannot mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them, can they? So Jesus, again, we're going to go with the Christ consciousness. Remember, Christ is the one that is steering this path. We are the Christ consciousness as we are looking to understand these teachings. The wedding guests cannot mourn. What are wedding guests? Mourning, we've seen mourning before, right? Mourning is healing. Mourning is purging. Mourning is finding a way to get comfort with your issues so that you don't continue on. You must mourn those things in order to become empty. So we know that about mourning. The bridegroom, who's the bridegroom? We see this as the conscious. The bridegroom is the one that is in charge of the household. The bridegroom in this case is being an analog representing the consciousness of the individual. They would have thought it was the carnal mind, the soul is the female something. Wedding guests are who? You want a bride and you want a groom and you want them to be together as one. If you have guests, you got problems. They need to go away. The guests, in this case, represent something that becomes a part of your unity that don't belong in that unity of the husband and the wife, of the conscious and the subconscious. Male, female. All analogs steering us to the same thing, getting your thoughts and your hidden garbage so that they are not in conflict. And that only happens by getting rid of the hidden garbage and changing the thoughts. And again, we are using this upon ourselves. Where I'm coming to with this is that all of these component parts become part of your psyche. They become part of your insides. So the wedding guests need to go away. If you want to mourn, so the wedding guests cannot mourn, they cannot heal. These issues cannot heal as long as they are connected with the consciousness. As long as you are actively engaged with all of this stuff, your past. You can't leave it behind. Your issues, all the things that you cling to, the toxic things that are hurting you, but you struggle with. And maybe they're not all seemingly toxic. There are judgments. There are prejudices. There are things about us that make us not pure, not love, not open energy. We're looking for all of that. Any of those would be considered wedding guests. They need to go. The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. So once the consciousness says, I'm done with that stuff, I'm moving on, then they could diminish. When we go and look at this, we can see that teaching is in there, but we also, if we look at both verses and step back, we see that it went from John and the Pharisees not understanding, not knowing the deeper layer, to inside, to the mental world. It goes to inside the head, from outside to the outside world to the inside world, from the past to the present. We see this transition happening, and you catch it how? You read through this and go, that doesn't seem like it fits together. That's one way to spot it. This transition happens in other places in teachings, but it's not the only way that it's being taught. Judaism and Christianity is big on analogs that teach, it was once and now is this. You may have heard it said once, but all of those sorts of things that deal with moving from the past to the present, or from the physical world to the spiritual world, from the outer world to the inner world. And all of that is contained within here. If you step back and if you really analyze it and look at it, you see, okay, why would John and the Pharisees, what do they represent? John is the old physical life. The Pharisees are the ones that don't understand How come they don't fast? Well, fasting is a physical thing, and he's saying, okay, we're going to take it to the spiritual world. Fasting means healing, means getting away, means not feeding the things you need to leave behind. You stop feeding your wedding guests. Then it moves right into, no one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old cloak, for the patch pulls away from the cloak and a worse tear is made. Okay, let's take a look at everything again. We've got the analogs there. You're sewing a piece of unshrunk cloth, old cloth. It's a patch that pulls away, worse tear. So a cloth is something we cover ourselves with, a cloak. A cloak is what we cover ourselves with. And if we have a tear in that, we want to put a patch over it so that it covers us better. If we take it to the spiritual inside again, if we're trying to do this, we make it about our psyche. We are covering ourselves. We cover our shame, pain, hurt. We cover our nakedness with, they're not garments. The garments are metaphors for walls, shame, hurt, anger, things that we lash out against. Maybe somebody's getting close to something that's going to trigger you. You're sensitive about it. You blow up, which puts up a wall and makes people step back, when in all reality, you got issues. You are covering yourself with those things. And if you decide at some point on this path that you're going to move ahead and just leave everything in place in the past, this is what happens. And I've also mentioned that we are the cloak. I think we can look at it in all ways. What the teaching really here boils down to is that in order to move on in life, to have a new life, you must make sure that your past life is put to rest. You can't drag all of that demons and all of the things with you into your new life. They don't fit. They don't belong. And then we had, neither is new wine put into old wineskins, otherwise the skins will burst and the wine is spilled and the skins are destroyed. So we look at that as the same thing. They're teaching the same lesson. We're changing the analogs. We are now, because we bring it inside, we now become the wineskin. The wine is something that enhances the way you feel. You're looking for new wine, a new way to feel. Put in yourself. And if you try to put new wine, new feeling into your old self, the skins will burst and the wine is spilled. You see what's emerging here is if you go through this and treat it as if it is a part of your inner life and you live it through, it'll teach you the same thing, that it ruins your life. You can't do that. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved. So in the end, we've got a number of things going on in this group of verses. It's a bigger chunk going on. But it starts off shifting us from the outer world to the inner world, and from the past to the present, all in once. From the old way to the new way, our old self to our new self. And that in order to do that, we stop looking at the physical world and look at the inner world. And then once we do that, we realize we have to, in the end, we need a rebirth. We need to purge ourselves in order to move on. In order to have the new wine, the new life put into ourselves, we have to rectify that stuff. You're going to find that these teachings are boringly about healing, forgiving, letting that go, turning it loose. It'll flow better in life, the Tao, the glory of God, etc., etc., etc. Over and over and over again in all the possible analogs that they had in their day. That is what is going to emerge. What we see here then is in this big chunk is a bigger inner teaching. I'm going to show you something real quick here. I want to bring in something that represents a bit of a parallel here. This comes from the Gospel of Thomas. And as I said in the very beginning of the series, that I consider the Gospel of Thomas, after decoding it with this process, as a exactly viable source of the same teaching. It decodes to teach the same thing in different analogs again. It's expressed a bit differently. It's spread all over a population. It is multi-source and multi-audience. Verse 37, his disciples said, "When will you become revealed to us, and when shall we see you?" Jesus said, "When you disrobe without being ashamed, and take up your garments and place them under your feet like little children, and tread on them, then you will see the Son of the Living One, and you will not be afraid." Disrobing, we have to decode that, right? This does not mean literal. Taking off your clothes and putting them under your feet. Standing naked with no shame. What does that get you in the physical world? It can't be used that way. Disrobing means taking off the things that cover you. Standing naked before people is not okay in the physical world, but in the spiritual world, it's exactly right. I got no shame. What do you got on me? Nothing. Nothing I've done hurts me anymore. I put it to rest. I'm healed. I'm okay. It's not about having no fear. It's about having no reason to be afraid. I kind of look at that as a Jesus work, though, and I know I've heard from Christians before, that's not authorized. The church fathers do not approve that. And yeah, I'm that person that says, I don't care nobody approves my material. I'll take what's there, read it and study for myself. Don't let people tell you what to believe and what works and what doesn't work. They're just going with their own belief. They can't reconcile verses like this when it comes to a literal translation. You can't give this to the public and say this is a part of our religion. Things like that need to be left out, but they still contain the teaching. They just are in a shell. They're packaged in a way that it doesn't fit with Christianity, but it still fits with the inner religious path. I'm going to move ahead now to another example here. I'm going to jump over to the Tao Te Ching for a second. In verse 46, when the Tao is present in the universe, the horses haul manure. When the Tao is absent from the universe, war horses are bred outside the city. There is no greater sin than desire, no greater curse than discontent, no greater misfortune than wanting something for oneself. Therefore, he who knows enough is enough will always have enough. Okay, the reason I popped this one up was to show that style again. This appears in the Tao Te Ching, what we just spotted, something in those Jesus verses where it went from, why do our disciples fast, but your disciples don't fast? And then he began responding by the bridegroom responses and the bride guests or the wedding guests. In this case, what we saw here was going from war horses hauling manure and suddenly jumping to no greater sin than desire. If we look at the first verse and interpret it and try to make it about the world, the Tao is the flow, that's the way, it is present, it is all good. When everything is fine, the horses are hauling manure. The manure would presumably be for your garden to enrich life, to enrich the things that are happening. But when that is absent, war horses are bred outside the city. We got problems. We got conflict going on, don't we? Then right away it jumps into there's no greater sin than desire, no greater curse than discontent. Where did it go from war horses and manure in the garden to sin than desire? The same thing happened here. We transitioned from outside to inside. It went from the outer world to the inner world. I'm not going to spend time decoding this. I've already done that. But these are the examples that you can see sometime. You read a chunk of verse and think, that doesn't seem like it flows very well. It goes from one weird thing to another weird thing. Watch that. I think that I spot those here and there. They always seem to show that same thing. If you read the first one, it's like a physical outer looking thing. And the next one has to do with inner looking. That is there. Sometimes I think they're smooth and you wouldn't detect them. That depending on the analogs that they use, it might flow so well that you wouldn't catch it. Sometimes they seem a little jumbled like this and they seem kind of clunky. And it almost, it'll get your attention, whether it was intended to or not. And by that, I mean whether it was intended to be clunky to get your attention. The verse is obviously intended to take you from the outer to the inner or from the past to the new. Somehow that transition is happening from the past to the future. At the same time it's doing that, each one of the verses is teaching a lesson. So there's an individual lesson, and then there's a larger lesson contained in a larger group at times. That's just one style. I'll keep going through different verses here in different ways, bouncing around to different things, just to continue to maintain familiarity. It's a process that's a learned process, and once you're on board with it, it goes. I'm going to go with Mark 21 through 23. This is a lamp under a bushel basket. He said to them, Is a lamp brought in to be put under a bushel basket or under the bed, and not on the lampstand? For there is nothing hidden except to be disclosed, nor is anything secret except to come to light. Let anyone with ears to hear listen. Okay, that last one there, let anyone with ears to hear listen. That's just periodically that pops up. It doesn't mean anything except it's a periodic reminder right there to pay attention, figure this out. It's kind of his way once in a while of saying, get this. Back to the verse. Is a lamp brought in to be put under a bushel basket or under the bed, and not on a lampstand? What we're looking at is illumination, a light, something to be brought out into the light or hidden away, something illuminated or something hidden. Okay, we get that idea. And we're looking inside. Remember, we're not looking in the room under the bed for the, the ghost and all that kind of stuff. We're looking up in here into our dark recesses of our mind. For there is nothing hidden except to be disclosed, nor is anything secret except to come to light. Now, we can hold secrets. We can probably do things like that. This is really kind of inferring or referring to things that we have put away inside of us continue to surface. They come up. They come to the light. They are disclosed. If you try to hide it away, it surfaces. We see this when we see the people screaming and yelling about, you gays, this and not. What are you looking at right there? You're looking at somebody who has an incredible amount of, somebody has a strong wall up. And what is behind that wall? I can't say, but they are beating people with that wall. Nothing else, just that. What does that tell you? What is hidden? Is it hidden, or is it coming to the light? Are we known by our fruits? I doth think you protest too much. That's what this is. As we fight and scream and yell against things that we don't like, or as stuff comes up, or as we get triggered, those are the things inside of us. And what we need to do is illuminate them. We need to not deny them. We need to look at them. We need to bring them into the light. Healing begins as we do that. When we deny them, we can't heal. They stay monsters. We have to accept them and go face them, look at them and become friends with them, and then they cease. But we have to bring them to the light, which ultimately is code for we need to bring them into our consciousness. We need to stop denying them and hiding them away with fear and go look at them and say, all right, I'm going after you. I'm going to illuminate you and become friends with you, and then you will cease to hurt me. That is how the soul and the psyche works. When we're hurt and we deny that hurt, it acts out. When we figure out how to make friends with that hurt, it ceases to being hurt and it ceases to act out. That's what this verse is telling us. Heal yourself. And if you don't, it'll come out. It'll act out anyway. Next, verse 24. And he said to them, pay attention to what you hear. The measure you give will be the measure you get, and still more will be given you. For those who have, more will be given, and to those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. Okay, well, I am absolutely not any kind of a certified world expert, but I can assure you for myself, I will never take anything that Jesus, Buddha, or the Lao Tzu says as face value. They are all nested teachings for us to learn something from. So these are not plain language. Honestly, the measure you give will be the measure you get. If you're nice to people that don't care or that are narcissists and just take from you and take from you and take from you, you're going to get something back. You're going to get more and more and more and more when you do that. That doesn't work at all. You look at that and go, well, that sounds wonderful. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So what could it mean then? What I measure is inside of me. And what I'm measuring is my experiences, my memories. And if you've been following along and you've got a little bit of the other a little bit of the Lao Tzu and a little bit of the other Jesus work that I've talked about already. This is the same thing as where you are naming something in particular, in Lao Tzu's case, to give it a life inside of you, or in Jesus' case, if you judge something, that is when you have an experience and you decide whether it is good or bad. The measure you give, that's your decision about what the emotional life is of any particular situation that you put away inside of you. That is the measure. And when you put it away with the way that you've measured it, again, it's emotion. You will get more emotion like that. Love, joy, hate, shame. And as I remember them, some of them are fond, and I think of them. And as I do, they enhance, and they activate, and they create that feeling in me. And they enhance my experience in that way. And I will continue to build that as I network that, as I think that, as I experience that. By the same token, however, if I've taken experiences and assigned them values that are derogatory to my well-being or to life in general or the people around me, I've called them shame, or somehow I've got anger or something acting out in some ways, or judgment or somewhere. As I've got that inside of me, those are thoughts that I have, that are beliefs, that are convictions, and the more I give them time, attention, and energy, the more they will grow. This goes back to that secret thing, isn't it, where I said, yeah, don't listen to them, where they said just ignore it. There's a part that you do let things go. You have to let things go and ease off, but you're doing that by engaging with them. You're not just turning away from them and ignoring them. You're going and looking at them. You're making friends with them. You're looking at them on all sides until they cease to affect you in a derogatory way. So yeah, that's it. The measure you give is the measure you give to the things inside of you, your own offspring, your love, your joy, your hate, your shame, all of those things. The more energy you give those, the bigger they get. And by the same token, yeah, to those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. So as you continue to move that direction of cleaning things out, of diminishing, of letting things go and going, okay, I got it. I am so grabbed onto my life and my experiences that's what's causing my life. And I'm gradually learning to let that go. And as I do, and I'm letting it go, more and more of it will be taken away. And you're looking to be empty. You're looking to be poor in spirit. This is a desirable thing, to have things taken away. Sounds backwards. You got to figure it out. All right, I'm going to throw a bonus chunk of something in here. I don't know if I've got this set up okay. It looks all right. Okay. I'm going to read something from the Nag Hammadi, the Marvin Meyer translation. And this comes from some place I said I didn't say I was going to be pulling from. So this is not part of you'll see why it fits. This comes from the Gospel of Philip. It is considered a Gnostic document because it was collected by the Gnostics. I consider it the Gospel of Philip. Okay, I'm going to read a couple of things, and they're kind of long. I'm not going to type them out, but I'll post a copy of it in the stuff below. This is called Hidden Parts. As long as their insides are hidden, most things in the world are alive and well. If their insides are exposed, they die, as is clear by the example of the visible part of a person. As long as a person's intestines are hidden, the person is alive. If the intestines are exposed and come out, the person dies. Likewise, while its root is hidden, a tree sprouts and grows. If its root is exposed, the tree withers. Okay, right there what we have is this description of how the human, or bodies, things that are in the physical world, or some physical things exist as long as their insides are put away, as long as they're not exposed. But when things become exposed, they die. They cannot live. This thing cannot live with it being exposed, with its insides exposed. And then it goes on to make the parallel with a tree as well. The tree is the same way. As long as it grows and you chop it down, it keeps growing back until you pull it out by the root. When the root is exposed, then it withers and goes away. So it is with all things produced in the world, not only the visible, but also the hidden. As long as the root of evil is hidden, it is strong. When it is recognized, it is undone, and if it is brought to light, it dies. For this reason the word says, already the axe is laid at the root of the trees. It will not merrily cut them down, for what is cut down sprouts up again, but the axe will dig down until it cuts out the root. Jesus pulled out the root of the whole place, but others did so only in part. So what we get here is a couple of things. Number one, as long as the root of evil is hidden, it is strong. They're telling you right here what the analogs are. They're not being very hidden about it. It's a little bit more plain language, almost. You can kind of look at this and go, I can kind of see what they're getting at. Yeah, if you want something to die off, expose it from the inside. And then, for some reason, we've got something at the end here about Jesus pulling out the root of the whole place. What is that? That's his garden. He's pulling out the roots of everything in there, going for emptiness. But that might not be complete. The next section says the root of evil. Let each of us also dig down after the root of evil within us and pull it out of our hearts from the root. It will be uprooted if we recognize it, but if we are ignorant of it, it takes root in us and produces fruit in our hearts. It dominates us. We are its slaves, and it takes us captive so that we do what we do not want to do and do not do what we want. It is powerful because we do not recognize it. As long as it exists, it stays active. There we have it. When we ignore the things inside of us, they stay in place. And when we look at them and expose them, they go away. It's a simple matter of digging out all the things that through a life, especially, maybe this is global. I think in a lot of culture, at least, I will say we are raised, tough it out, shut up, don't tell anybody, carry it. And that is what kills us. That destroys ourselves. That destroys our capacity to be, it makes us unable to talk out issues. And then it makes it so we become so fearful later on. We will carry so much stuff, we become the man of the tombs, many people. And that doesn't mean jail. That just means people that, you don't want to be around or that are tough to be around. Or, I've been the man of the tombs if I'm not still sometimes. We all have things inside of us we're trying to rectify. And the issue is trying to see them and rectify them, pulling them out, recognizing them, acknowledging them, not denying them, realizing that we picked something up along the way, but we can zero in on it at a finer degree of resolution than they could by simply realizing that we have a space where we have stored it as a memory and an emotional perception. And we've put it away, and it's networking there, and it's living in the background that way. And it continues to do other things. I'll tell you, when Jesus says going after the cornerstone to destroy the temple, to rebuild it, that's the cornerstone, the temple that needs to be rebuilt, the bad temple that is inside of you that needs to be rebuilt. You just go to the cornerstone, go to the point of origin, not all the recent things, and work on that. If you go to the point of origin and take care of the worst thing, everything else grows off of that. It's a support mechanism. It starts taking that out. I can say that is an experiential trip, though. That is something that is a personal thing. It's not supernatural. It's real. You can interact with this to change your life. If you use it that way, you can use it other ways. I just don't like to see people use it to hurt others. I don't think it was ever intended for that. That problem came in somewhere else. That wasn't Jesus. Okay, I'm going to start wrapping this up, but I'm going to do one more verse here. This is Matthew, we have 18:21. Then Peter came and said to him, Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times? Jesus said to him, not 7 times, but I tell you, 77 times. Numbers are another layer. 3, 7, 12, 40. Probably several thousand times in the Bible those numbers appear. I don't even go look at that layer. There's a lot in this case, though. Those numbers mean something differently. But this is being asked, imagine this. Somebody is just all the time being a problem to you. Do you always forgive them, or do you say, wow, enough is enough? But if it's somebody inside of you, and this is your church, and the brother that you have is somebody you were raised with, that that brother that you have that tells you you're worthless, or that you are stupid, or you're a piece of crap, or something else, that you're angry, that your first response is accusation, that one that you keep working on and go, I don't want it to be there anymore. It's going to be there. It was part of our childhood networking. You have to forgive that over and over and over, but you have to recognize that it's happening and realize where it comes from and accept it. The more you accept that and understand it and see it, the more it diminishes. But those ones are tough. So when you have something that continually acts out inside of you, which I have, I do. And I have to, how it's gotten the best, my most significant improvement with it has come about by acknowledging it, looking at it, understanding, okay, yeah, that's how I was born. I see, I was wired that way. That's my automatic go-to. Keep thinking about it, keep catching it, catch it faster, work on it quicker. Forgive yourself, but go easy on yourself. You can't keep looking at yourself and going, damn it, God, I can't get this. That's not the way to do it. You're being hard. You have to go, oh, I see you. I have been enemies with you, and let me embrace you. You're this pain, this whatever. When that happens, this kind of a mental acceptance happens, and that anguish and that fear begins to diminish, and a healing takes place. So, anyway, I just wanted to throw that out. The verses decode, but when you decode them, they're not telling a fairy story. They're teaching a path to healing, to enlightenment, to the kingdom of heaven within. Anyway, okay, I'm going to bring this video to a close. I hope you enjoyed it. I did. I always get something out of it. When you go through this, you learn more. It makes you think about it, and then you see stuff and you have ideas. I can go back to early videos and hear my interpretations and think, boy, that was pretty shallow. I realize I continue to figure it out and grow as I go along. And that's the way it works for everything, though, isn't it? You learn whatever you practice at, you get better at. Anyway, it's fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Love one another, and I'll see you in the next video.